Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reality Chat. Bam. Put some posts up while we wait for our guest of honor, who should be here in a minute. I just talked to him, so he's still alive, which is good. I like when people I know are alive. But, yeah, we are waiting for Mr. Barack to join. Hello, Aaron. Hello, Maria. Welcome to Reality Chat. I hope you guys are doing good. I'm gonna wave at you guys. Wave. But yeah, just giving it a second for Barack to join. I hope you guys are doing well today. I can read your comments. I can't really see you. Hey, Aaron. It was actually pretty interesting. I'm glad you're alive. It's interesting. I was like, oh, I should find people to be a part of this because I want to talk to different people. What's up, Nick? And then I was like, let me just scroll through people that I want to talk to. And then I was like, just finding all these people that I was like, I like talking to this person. I haven't seen them in a while. And Aaron, you were one of them. So I'll continue that conversation after this talk. But I gotta see if Barack can get on. Please, I'm gonna message him right now. Log on to my IG live stream via my story. Okay. Oh, my brother's here? Dang, dude, all the people are showing up. So we're waiting for the guest of honor, but good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all you people. And Austin is here, dude. All the people that I've known from my past are just coming out in full force. So yeah, we're gonna have a good meeting today. Bam, there you go. Barack is online, the guest of honor. Let me put him on the screen. Send him a little message. Calvin, I don't know what that says. I'm guessing that's Mandarin, but I know I don't know Mandarin. Mr. Barack.
Hello, sir. How's it going?
It's going really well. I'm having a good day. How are you doing?
Oh, I can't complain. That's another day in paradise.
Yeah. It's interesting, how your perspective has so much to do with the outcome of reality. And I remember when I was working in Seattle, there was this thing that people would say where you'd be like, oh, how's today going at work? And they'd be like, oh, living the dream. And that was like so disheartening to me because it was so sarcastic. And like nobody would ever say that in like good faith. And so it was like, how you doing?
Okay.
It's like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. And they're like, living the dream. And you're like, oh God. But
Not another one. Yeah, come across those a couple of times. I try to stay pretty optimistic, and not being facetious or being sarcastic, but genuinely. Most of the time, in most cases, at least in my experience, things could be a lot worse. There's been very few situations where I'm just like, oh man, this is the pits.
I appreciate your use of the word facetious because I pop that word out every now and then I get like what are you talking about? Why are you trying to act smart? But I think it's a good word. So I hope you're actually doing good today on this beautiful Southern California Thursday. And I hope everybody that's watching is doing good. Welcome to Reality Chat, the weekly Instagram live kind of conversation series where somebody talks to me about some interesting topic. Today is the topic of favoring simplicity. There's 1,000 different ways to say this topic, but I feel like you don't really get a feel for it until we start talking about it. It's going to be really interesting. But basically the point is we're doing a live chat so people can see us talking and have good, positive conversation and ideas kind of flow in other people's lives. Please feel free to say stuff in the comments, to ask questions. I'm going to be talking to Rocky, but I'm going to also be watching the comments. So if you guys want to participate a little bit, feel free. And if you have questions and stuff, ask. But yeah, Rocky is a person that I met during this project because Reality Chat, which we're doing right now, is a part of PACT. PACT is Philosophy and Critical Thinking, and he has been coming to some of the community discussions and workshops that I run to try and get people to meet other people and talk and be creative and stuff. And it's been really nice. He's been one of the people that I think is the most articulate. I've been hesitant to actually call you articulate because since I watched the Boondocks, I've kind of connotated articulate with being racist against black people.
Oh, oh man, yeah, there are a lot of lessons hidden in that show for sure.
But like not necessarily articulate like you pronounce words really well, but that you articulate your ideas in a way that I think is accessible to a lot of people, and it's hard to misunderstand the way that you say stuff. So I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you, thank you. I guess I would say I've gotten that from a habit of it actually being a struggle. I'd say for most of, I'd say middle school, high school, going into college, it was a real struggle for me to get ideas out many times, especially stuff that where I'd have a certain concept or idea that's, I guess, further besides the more basic concepts, and I'd be like, I don't know which words to use, and kind of it'd almost be a situation where not necessarily a stutter, but I guess you could say a stutter of the mind and not necessarily a stutter of the tongue. And so to exercise that, I tried to keep my diction and even some of the words I was using as basic as possible. So if I'd ever try to figure out, well, how do I explain this to somebody else? It's like, well, start at the base and then build on top of that. I guess keep it simple, kind of like your topic for today.
Yeah,
simplicity.
Which is funny. There's in engineering, because I practice engineering. There's at least in mechanical engineering. I can't speak for other engineering. There's a phrase called KISS, and it means keep it simple, stupid. And it's this reminder to say, like, don't make your design like too elegant or too crazy or too hard to build. Just make it work. And there's always that play where sometimes once you start going down a path, you can start like flowing down this rabbit hole. And I know anybody that's a designer knows what I mean. Like it can start getting complicated real fast, especially if you have to work with other people. But sometimes you got to step back and say like, oh, wait a second. This can be this. So let's just do this. What's up, Scott? What's up, Colin? But the topic today, I think it may be a little misleading to just read favoring simplicity with where we're going. But before I start making a bunch of assumptions, because this is a live chat, everybody that's listening, we didn't prepare too much because I want to have a real conversation. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on kind of the topic that we prepared for today, Mr. Rocky.
Well, at first, I kind of hit a wall and was kind of like, well, what does that mean? And initially, I was kind of like, maybe I should go ahead and hit Jordan up and see, like, which direction is he going in with this? But I had to kind of sit on it and say, like, well, maybe that's part of the point, to just kind of see what is each person's interpretation, maybe, like, not necessarily having a right answer. Mm-hmm. And I just took it in the direction of being a way of just life in general. Like maybe either we prefer things to be simple in our lives, whether it's concepts, choices, products, emotions, kind of everything. And it's just being like generally speaking. Are we people that prefer simplicity? Are we more complex? And kind of everything in between.
Okay. I think I forget which day it was or which talk. We had a different talk earlier in life, and like we were waiting for a workshop to happen, and so we just started talking to each other. And one of the things that came up was kind of this difficulty that I experience when the concept that needs to happen in real life to have progress happen is like this, but it gets summarized into this, and somebody that takes this thinks they have this, and it's very hard to like talk to them about this part because this is what they have, and they're like, I already know, you don't need to tell me. Or it's some form of coping, I think, to help ignore things that you don't like and push on with the things that you do like. And I wanted to talk about like the idea of simplicity and enforcing simplicity, and is that a good thing in all cases, and can that lead us into trouble? which I think it can in a lot of cases, like when we follow like very simple heuristics or like simple life rules or mottos and stuff like that, like all's well that ends well. Like if you follow that rule to the T, like that's very simple, and I think it ignores a lot of the complexity of life, and it can get you into trouble if you follow that to the letter without thinking and going deeper into it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. I feel like there's a lot, not necessarily a lot, but there are quite a few areas that following just simple or rules or guidelines and not diving into the ambiguity or the gray area can lead to some unfortunate outcomes for sure. Where you're just kind of like, one of the areas I see this happen a lot is when you try to explain something to kids. Like if you're raising your son or your daughter, and you may have previously given them some sort of outline or some sort of rule for them as a guide to follow through life, and then you come across one of those circumstances that are just kind of in the gray area that aren't necessarily conventional. And then when they come to you with those questions to figure out, well, like you told me it's like mom, dad, you told me it's wrong to steal, but if someone previously took something that is not theirs and you're trying to give it back to people who are more worthy, is that still wrong to steal? It's kind of like, well, I mean, technically that's kind of different. So you have various times where you'll come across situations where it's like not everything is something. And the one, I guess, as a piggyback off of that concept, the one retort or comment that I hear a lot that I always hated is like, because I said so.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of like, that doesn't really help anybody. because and sort of the worst part about it is that it puts, in this particular case, parents in a situation where they get put on a pedestal, and so when they have faults, they have mistakes, they have their own problems. It doesn't leave in that area for their kids to realize like they're people too. I see that happen very frequently, where especially for most people, their parents kind of like are the role models, or they're just seen as not really being fallible.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, once that time, there's always some particular time or something that happens that you finally figure out, you know what, they're people too. Like they're humans, they have flaws and all that sort of stuff. And then there's usually some sort of, I guess, dramatic sort of event that happens after that, where there might be fallout. I know that happened with my family. I don't know if that happened with yours, but it's unfortunately that's one case where being simple is not necessarily the best way to go.
Yeah, I definitely have dealt with the because I said so. That's an interesting situation to deal with. And I think simplicity is cool if you can achieve it and still get what you need out of it. Like I'm always looking to make something simple, but I'm never looking to oversimplify something to the point where I erase things just to get the point across. And that I'm going to back up and say, this is something that it's weird how sometimes you think something's very obvious in your life, but then as you talk to more and more people, you're like, man, then maybe this is not as obvious, or this is unique to me. But like, I continuously say out loud and believe very strongly that the way that the mind works, at least in humans, is we have a lot of rules, we have a lot of systems, we have a lot of ways of doing things that run at the same time, but they're contradictory and they run into each other. It doesn't make sense. And so I think we run on these illogical systems, but we figure out a way to manage it. So like in this situation, because of this, I'm going to do this, but it's different in that situation because this person is a female, but over here, because it's my mom, I'm going to act this way. And there's no kind of like logical rhyme or rule to my behavior pattern in some cases, or my thought pattern. And sometimes there's other things like some just beliefs rather than knowledge. There's all these things that cause like conflict. But in terms of simplicity, I think there are certain times where when somebody is not in the space or on the level or whatever you want to say to really appreciate and understand and intake the concept for what it is at the level you're trying to give it, maybe then you can say, well, at least I can try to give them some of it and kind of dull it down so that they can get some of it. Because like I taught swimming to kids for like 10 years. I was like a lifeguard and a swim coach.
Okay.
And there was a time where I was like also in college and I was learning like fluid dynamics and how water worked and like all of these equations and all this stuff. And I was using it to help me get better at swimming. But when I was teaching like a 4-year-old, I was like, maybe I should not talk about Bernoulli's equation right now. And I'm going to just try to say just like, oh, just wave with the water, or like try to simplify it for their level. But I tried not to do it in a way where I said, this is it, this is the end. It was just like, this is what I'm going to say for now. This is what we're trying to understand right now. And it was actually pretty surprising to me that relatively young kids, like the swim team that I ran, they were like 12 to 13, maybe 14-year-olds. They would start asking me questions, and it got to the point where I was like, I asked my boss for a whiteboard, and I got a whiteboard, and I wheeled it out onto the pool deck, and I was teaching fluid dynamics to kids, because I was like, this idea is why you're moving slow, and if you can think about it in this way, I think it'll work better. And all the kids were just sitting there like crisscross applesauce looking at me with this whiteboard, and I'm like drawing all this stuff, and the parents are watching me like, I'm paying this guy to teach my kids how to swim, and he's over there putting math on a board or something like that. But I think try to give people the full concept that you know and that you want to give to them. But if you, for some reason, you see some resistance or some inability, then maybe kind of change it so that they get something. But try not to just pump out a very simple thing and treat that like the only aspect or the only facet of the idea.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of equate that to headlines, because headlines are like that, where the very nature of a headline is supposed to be this simple, eye-catching, attention-grabbing type of concept, and people take that and run with it as though that's the entire truth, the entire case of what's going on. And it's like, you have to, let's just assume that the rest of the article is actually factual. You have to jump into the article to actually figure out the ins and outs, all the ambiguities, whatever happened deeper. But the whole purpose of the headline is for it to be very simple, very short, just kind of something that will catch your eyes. You're going through this, listen to all these words and say, oh, okay, and just kind of focus your eyes in this particular direction. And that's something that I can see being kind of dangerous, because that mentality carries over to a lot of areas that I feel like it shouldn't, where something should be more detailed, and people should take more time with things if they don't.
And I want to just say to all the people watching right now and in the future, I really hope this conversation isn't taken like we're judging people. I think we're talking theoretically about people. I think all people do good and all people do bad at different times. But I think we're just having an idea conversation right now. But yeah, with the headline thing, I think that's kind of, I didn't want to say that outright in the beginning because I wanted to kind of build up to that. But that kind of hits the nail on the head, where did you read a headline, or did you overhear something in a conversation, and did you look into it at all? Did you see that Apple stock is way up and you just saw a headline and so you invested in Apple? And it's like, does that make any sense? Did you, I don't know, see a product, like a 30-second product commercial, and they said the word like hyaluronic acid like 14 times, and then you're like, oh, that must be good, and then you go and buy this cream, but like, do you even know what hyaluronic acid is? And this idea where sometimes we want catchphrases, or sometimes we want very simple, or we want a motto rather than the knowledge or the why behind, is this good, or is this good for me, or does this work? And I think that keeping that in mind can help us have more of an ability to be willing to look deeper into ideas, because I think sometimes we get convinced that yeah, this cream's got hyaluronic acid in it, so it's good. And until somebody asks me like, well, what is that? That's never going to jog in my head, and I'm just going to have that it has this, so it's good. But I'm never going to get to that, well, what is that makes it good? Why?
Oh yeah, definitely. I can see that. I mean, because like to piggyback off of that concept with like, I guess transfer over to diet. So you have, if you're thinking of stuff that is, say, a diet, like diet soda, or like certain meals or different concepts of whether it's vegan, gluten-free, all that sort of stuff, where you may, I've talked to various people who specifically with diet, they automatically assume that if something is diet, then it's inherently better for you, because that's just kind of the concept that they've been taught. And it's like, well, no, not necessarily. There's a trade-off with anything you put in your body. So if something is diet soda, and it's diet because it has maybe either less calories or less sugar inherently in it, to still get that same taste, there's something that is substituted instead, whether it's like aspartame, Splenda, like some other alternative.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're somebody who has really bad problems with your liver or with your kidneys or something like that, then in some cases, theoretically, that because that can have severe damage to those particular organs, that may actually be worse for you than if you had just gone and got the regular soda in that particular circumstance. But it's something where people typically automatically accept what is, I guess, the baseline truth, where it's like generically for most people, like this is true, but they don't dive into that. Well, for this particular circumstance, for my health, for this particular product, is that the same all the way across? Another one I was just talking to somebody about was the like. Have you ever tried like the Beyond Burgers or any of the like these vegetarian burgers that are coming
burgers
out?
and stuff like that?
Right. And this particular colleague of mine was talking about how he had noticed that these particular products were so much healthier for you than like going out and getting like a regular burger from someone. And I tell him, it's like that's not true. Like you can certainly say that maybe not having meat for that particular restricting meat from your diet might have some positive outcomes for you. But the trade-off is that there's so many things, like, for example, just with the Impossible Burger and the Beyond Meat, there's a lot of things that are traded off to put into that so that it tastes like beef.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, whether it's the increasingly elevated sodium levels, a lot of the different types of fats that are put in, as well as many of the preservatives. And so it's kind of like you can't just say, like, hey, especially like for some people, what they'll do is maybe if you're eating too many calories, like you're eating way too much food for the amount of energy that you're exerting, and so you're just switching from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet, but you're still eating that same amount. That doesn't equate, man. Like you still got to cut down how much you're actually putting into your body. And unfortunately, with this particular case, I was talking to someone who had been doing that and was having a struggle. And I was like, well, that's why. Like you're trading, I guess in this case, you're trading a 10-pound bag of apples for a 10-pound bag of oranges. And it's still 10 pounds. Like you need it to go down to 5 pounds.
Yeah. Like, I think I just came up with a better title for this talk now that you were saying that. That makes more sense. And that title is Fast Food Thinking. Which I think it's a simpler, it's not simpler, but it's a better simple explanation of what we're talking about, because it's not that fast food doesn't hold the place of food. You can eat fast food and it is food, but often there's this trade-off, and the trade-off, I think what you're bringing up in almost all your examples is the part that you should focus on. And it's the part that I think the advertisement and the simple ideas are designed to make you not focus on. But I don't think this idea is just about being a consumer and just about getting information from other things like billboards and stuff like that, which it is. That's very important. But also, in my mind, this has a lot to do with things like intention versus impact, where I've run into a lot of situations in my life where I have problems because someone did something, they had an impact in my life, and they had an intention that was not aligned with the impact. And so they're like, but my intentions were good. And it's like, well, yes, that's a very simple way of looking at it. That's one piece of the puzzle. But your intentions do not change what actually happened. And it's like those details that can be very, tricky. I'm not sure if I'm understanding that right, Taisha, but like it can be tricky to get a handle on everything at the same time and kind of like get into the ocean, stand up on your surfboard, and ride the wave at the same time. It can be tricky to coordinate all that stuff, but don't pretend like you're surfing when you're just sitting on your surfboard in the ocean. Like the idea I'm trying to put out is it's not always feasible to know everything about everything, but try not to get caught up in this whirlpool of, oh, I know because I read one sentence or something like that. And then Austin, I don't know if you're still here, but you wrote a comment said 3x leveraged options or bust, which I have no idea what that means. So if you could explain that, that'd be great. But this concept of it's good to have good intentions. It's good to read things, to read a headline, and then have an idea of what the book is about. Read the title of the book. It says Lord of the Rings. It's probably about the Lord of the Rings. But don't read the title of the book and then be like, oh, I know everything about this book. Don't read the back of the book and be like, oh, I know everything about this book. Read the book, or acknowledge that you don't know everything about the book. And I can't stress that idea enough, where I think for a lot of reasons, it's not because people are bad people or they're trying to lie to you. There's a lot of different pressures and a lot of different tricks in the information, misinformation, fake news. There's a lot of stuff coming at us all day, every day, and it is difficult to manage. But as much as we can, really just like try and understand topics. Try not to get swept up in hype. Try not to read something on Instagram, even if 40 people posted the same thing. Just because you read the same sentence 40 times does not make that sentence more true. Read the information behind it. Do the research behind it. Read the actual book. Go look at the sources for the articles. And this takes time, and it takes brain power and thought. Have some talks with some people. See if different sources connect and things like that. And yes, this takes a lot of time, and it seems like a lot of effort. But it's like the same idea with comparing prices at the grocery store. Take that time to look at the different prices if you're trying to get a good price and compare. Sometimes they put this one in cents per liter and this one in cents per ounce and this one in cents per gallon and I think they do that on purpose to deter you from doing the price check to see which one's actually cheaper. But if you take that time, that 30 seconds to use your phone to convert and blah, 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 you'll find that one is usually much cheaper than the other ones.
Oh yeah, definitely. That specific example is a really good one. That's a really good example because when you go into certain stores, you're going to see that the size of the particular writing on particular stamps. Obviously, it'll tie you into certain things. So you might see a sale. You're going into an apparel store, and then the sign says 75% off, huge, and you automatically think of that, and maybe it's like a closet rack or like a 4x4, and you're thinking like, hey, okay, everything on this is 75% off. That's a great deal. Let me grab everything that's on here. And then the fine print right underneath it will say, on particular shorts that are polka dot pink with black stripes that can release at this certain time.
Warning.
Exactly.
Try this medicine. It'll be great.
Oh man, that one gets me every time because, especially with those commercials, because you see like how many different side effects there are. You're like, wait, I feel like this might be worse for me to take this drug than not taking it if it's gonna cause chest pains, cause diarrhea, or they'll say something about if you're at the risk of death, call your doctor. And you're just kind of like, yeah, I think that might be a little. If I'm at borderline about to go over it, I don't think that's what I want to be calling the doctor. I want to be calling him a little bit ahead of that. So yeah, your point about I guess, doing the work. I think that makes a lot of sense because most of the time I feel like we're in a situation where, like, your brain, or at least your brain feels like it, you only have so much capacity. There's only so many things that you can take in, you can ingest. And so in your daily life, you're constantly like, almost like you're prioritizing. Like, what do I really have time for? Do I have time to really understand this, take the time to research this? And so it seems like your brain's constantly cutting corners, like trying to, almost like it's like the energy that you have to understand information, you're on a budget. And so you're trying to prioritize what stuff do I really have time to be worrying about versus what stuff can I just kind of simply read, take in whatever my first observation is, and keep right on moving. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of times that kind of lets us get into a situation where we're really uninformed. Because I'd say most things are not simply just what you see is what you get. It's almost like we are, many times we're looking at the world as though it is two-dimensional, and we're not seeing that third dimension behind it, where there's actual depth and there's actual texture behind it, and we're just kind of looking at it like, oh, okay, I see a face, and like that's all I see. I'm not really worried about any of the actual depth there. Let me just keep right on going. And in many cases, what is behind that in that third dimension is actually what we need. That's the more important stuff.
Yeah, I think I'm very lucky in this, and that like my profession is like a technical profession, and like I'm the
Okay.
person in the office that reads the fine print, and then everybody goes like, "Oh my gosh, this isn't gonna work. How are we gonna ship this on time?" And I'll be like, "The rules say that in certain circumstances, this and this and this and this and this and this, so we don't have to do that. It's just non-preferred." And they're like, "Oh, okay, so we can still shoot." It's like, "Yep," and the customer is gonna complain, but technically it's what they asked for. And the whole idea of really knowing something so that you can make a confident decision and not feel like you're gambling. Like if you make a decision and you feel uneasy about it, I feel that's because you don't know everything about there's still corners that you haven't shown light on, and it comes out in this uneasy feeling. But if you know, like if you read through the stuff, you understand it, you sat down, you had conversations, you did all your due diligence, you should be like, this is right, and I'm gonna do that. And it's not always like that, because there's people that make decisions that are very difficult. Like if we're going to go to war or something like that, you don't always have access to all the information. But as much as you can, I'd say try to get access to the information. And then I wanted to say to Scott, thank you for bringing that up, because I often get super theoretical and forget to be humble. But yeah,
Well, what did Scott say?
he said, read the book and realize that you still don't know everything about the book. So even though you do your due diligence, even though you read other articles and stuff, and there's this much, realize how difficult it is to actually gain 100% knowledge, like to be perfect in something. Like that's not really likely. And so keep that humility about maybe I don't know something, and having that open mind to even like, this is not good and this is better, this is better, this is better, but realize you're never really going to get here. So always having that ability to learn something, always having that ability to listen actively. And even though I know I did a lot of research, even though I know I have a PhD in this, if you say you have something new, like maybe you do, so maybe I should listen to you. Maybe don't just be like, I've been doing this for 20 years. You just started, so you don't know anything. It's like, maybe you went to a different college. Maybe when you went to college, the internet existed. So your entire college experience was way different than mine. So maybe I do have something to learn from you. So that's a really good point, Scott. And then thank you for explaining, Red Panda, about the stock thing I said at the beginning. Snap decisions about stock, I think, are a really good example of this. And I think a lot of this has to do with like peer pressure or self-pressure that we put on that seems like peer pressure, where it seems like everybody is getting ahead in life and we're not, and we need to make decisions faster, or we need to catch up with the Joneses, or look at their relationship is way better, so we need to do that. And it's like, no. Like, in my opinion, a relationship is good because people take the time to understand each other and work on the relationship. Not because they buy each other jewelry or they go on vacations all the time. Like, really look and understand what you're trying to get out of something and try and figure out how to do that, make a plan, and then go get it. You don't need to always like write a dissertation and then present it to a bunch of peers and get it reviewed. But like, think about stuff. Does that jive with what you know, what your experiences is? And then seek to understand and learn, and always kind of be humble and being open-minded. And no, you don't need to read IKEA instructions, Taisha. That's not necessary. Or I don't believe, that's not a belief that I have, but I know what you're saying. Like when you buy office furniture and you're like, I don't need instructions, and then at the end you have like 6 screws that you didn't use, and you're like, maybe I should have used these screws somewhere. Can you hear, Rocky? You look like you might be having some technicals. Rocky? Hello? It looks like Rocky cannot hear me, which is kind of a bummer.
Not sure if you can hear me, Jordan, but I can't hear you.
I can hear you right now. Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, so it seems like Rocky's working out some technical stuff. So I'm gonna go on a dialogue. And it's funny that you guys are talking about in the comments. You guys are talking about IKEA instructions, because engineers work really hard to make those instructions like as simple as possible, so that you can't make mistakes, you can't misunderstand. But sometimes when people try to make instructions really simple, it makes it confusing because you're used to a certain format of instructions or this or that. And I think the same thing happens with iPhones. If you have an iPhone, sometimes they try to make it so obvious and so simple that you just figure out how to use it on your own. But I don't know if you guys have the same experience as me. Rocky, I don't know. Can you hear me yet?
Yeah, now I can hear you. I'm back.
Cool. But with iPhones, sometimes they add new features and they don't tell you, because the whole idea is like they design it so you naturally figure it out. And I'll have a phone for like a year, and then I'll swipe in a weird way and I'll be like, whoa, it does this thing. And so the directions that you're given, the headlines that you're given, the way that people present information to you does have a lot to do with how you understand and how you're able to perceive and how you're able to dig into information. But I don't think that just because information is presented to you in a very sensational way, in a very simple way, and like big block letters and stuff, that should dissuade you or get you to not look into it further if it's interesting or if it has an impact on your life or something like that.
Oh yeah, I could definitely agree with that, because I mean, too, it's not necessarily the easy to do all the time, because right now, like for example, the main thing that's kind of going on is people are trying to figure out, well, if the what the COVID rates are currently doing right now in their state, and it's kind of hard to figure out exactly. On some days it says it's going down, some days it says it's going up, and you're not entirely sure what they mean, because they might be talking about like the whole picture. And then sometimes they're talking about over like a 10 or 7 day period or within 24 hours. And it's kind of like, well, like everyone's just kind of like, in a sense, they're trying to say, like, just tell me, can I go outside? Like, that's all I really care about. Can I go back to work? Like, just give me the simple answer and just kind of tell me, am I safe or am I not safe? And it's kind of like, especially when you're dealing with many of these scientists, they're in a situation where it's like, we don't exactly know. Because the truth is very ambiguous. It's kind of like, well, you could get sick in certain situations. You could maybe not get sick in certain situations. I was just watching the news earlier, and they were talking about the confusion with the World Health Organization talking about people who were asymptomatic, if they could or couldn't still get sick. And it's kind of like, you have to read a lot from many different people to kind of come up with your own sort of answer that makes sense to you. And unfortunately, right now, we're in a situation where a lot of the different sources of information are coming from maybe like opposite sides. Usually in a situation, you can kind of average out what everyone is saying and kind of figure out like, oh, somewhere in the middle is kind of like what the truth is. But when in this case, when many people are saying literally opposite things, you're kind of like, well, which way do I go? There's no real middle for yes and no. Like maybe, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, I think in that case today, you brought up, I think, two good points. And one is polarization, where there's like two opposing sides, and it's hard to pick a side because they seem so extreme. Um, I would say if you're seeking to understand and learn something, like if you realize, like, okay, I don't know everything, I'm trying to learn something. I think number one, before you go looking into sources, understand who's a credible source. Um, I I I don't take investment advice at the water cooler at work because I don't work in an investment firm. None of those people are investors, so I don't take investment advice for them. I do my best to try and only take advice from people who have more experience or results than me in that area. I don't take house buying advice from people who have never bought a house or people who are not real estate agents. I don't take relationship advice from people who are not in relationships or are always in terrible relationships and abusive relationships. Um, and I'm not saying like ignore people and be mean, like I don't want to listen to you because of this and that. Like people have their good opinions. And sometimes if you were in a bad relationship, you have some information that might be important. But it kind of has like a general rule. And then with the COVID people, where you're saying like people just want to know, is it safe? Can I go back to work? I think sometimes we get frustrated as humans because it seems overwhelming, or we've tried really hard to understand and it hasn't worked out. We still have that uneasy feeling of maybe I don't know everything, and we get kind of exhausted or fatigued or frustrated in our pursuit of knowledge, and we go like, you know what? Just give me the answer. Just tell me it's simple, and then I'll move on. And I think that's really dangerous. I think being patient and waiting it out and trying to go and get good sources is very frustrating. This is what I do for my regular job, and it's extremely frustrating. But it's good and it's gratifying, and it gives you answers you can rely on. Um, but it's difficult sometimes to fight yourself and say, stop, calm down, keep going. There's a lot of cases in our lives, like when you're fixing your car and you don't know if something's going to work. Uh, when you're in a relationship with somebody and you're getting frustrated because you don't understand what's going on or you don't know how to fix a problem. Um, when you're in a pandemic and you just want to go outside and be safe. Like the constant vigilance to not get overly frustrated, not get fatigued, and not give up on learning something, especially sometimes because we want something really bad. Sometimes we start convincing ourselves over time that what we want is true, even though that's not a good way to say what's true or not. But those kind of things I think kind of stood out to me from what you were saying.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Because it seems like I don't know if it's something that we just naturally do, or maybe just as people we get a bit more lazy. But you want to jump to conclusions in many cases where that not isn't necessarily the best thing to do. If you're looking for a definitive answer that's like, yes, this is something that I can take to the bank, like how somebody mentioned in there earlier about like options, like trading and stuff like that. And that's one of those situations specifically that is a great example of what you're talking about, where like if you were someone who traded like stock options, it's like that's something where you have to constantly read and read and read. In terms of getting an idea of not only what is going to happen with your stock, but what has happened previously, to get an idea of probably where it's going in the future. And it's not just something where you're just like, I like Harleys, so maybe I should just invest in Harley Davidson. Like, that sounds like a great idea, especially if you're like, well, say if they're behind the ball on investing in trying to create like an electric motorcycle or something where it's like their CEO has been caught up in a couple of situations of embezzlement or other crazy stuff that's going on. It's like you kind of want to read between the lines and figure out exactly like what's going on with this. If you are going to put something that you need to be important on, something where you need the truth. I guess in a sense, something that matters. I guess it seems like there's this layer of information where there are certain times where something is really not that important. Like maybe it's something where it's just an opinion, or it's not something that you're going to make any sort of decision off of, and you can just kind of judge things at face value. And then there's this other side where we have certain things where we need information to make a decision, to make a choice, or something that's going to have an impact on not just your life, but someone else's life. That's where you kind of need to make sure you have all the facts. And as daunting as it can be to go to many different sources, or even like, I guess in the situation that you're talking about, where you may want a certain outcome, or you may agree with a particular point of view, so then that may decide who you go to ask for the information.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, especially if you're looking for a certain outcome, and you're just like, just hypothetically, you want to know if you're a great guy. So then you only go to your best friend to ask if, hey, I'm a great guy, right? Like, you don't go to in a situation where you're like, well, if I truly want to know, maybe I should go to all the people that I've had the most arguments with, the most quarrels, and talk to them. And then if I can judge my answer off of both sides, the people who really love me, the people who don't, and then get a valid type of answer from that. Especially if it's like one of those situations where it might be a situation where it's like, yeah, like, you're a great person, except for that you're really judgmental, or you're kind of a dick, and blah, 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 blah. So, but you don't hear any of that because you're not really getting a valid response from all the possible options.
Yeah. There's I was seeing a couple of like simple meme-based kind of ideas in terms of like baloney detection, where I think there's some social justice stuff going on. Yes, I'm gonna finally mention it. In today's climate, and I think there's certain things, there's certain fallacies that people can fall into. I think the sunken cost fallacy is a very heavy one in investing, where because I've put so much into it, I must continue, or else my past lost investments won't be worth it. It's like, you already lost them. It's already not worth it. Is it going to be worth it in the future only? Look that way. And the sunken cost fallacy is looking this way when you should look that way. The straw man fallacy, where I say, Rocky, I heard your idea, and I don't think that's true because of these reasons. And then Rocky goes like, are you calling me stupid? And it's like, no, I talked about your idea only. I didn't talk about you at all. I didn't say anything about you. So don't say that I made judgment or character decisions about you because I talked to your idea. The straw man is confusing attack on an idea with an attack on a person. And sometimes we can get into these spaces where we want something to be true, or we like something, and we start curating this anti-logic to help us get there. Or like what you were saying, which I liked a lot, is we tend to go to sources that create a bias towards what we want, which is called like an echo chamber, I think, where, yeah, if I want to know if there's something wrong with me, I should go talk to all the people that I have trouble with. I shouldn't talk to all the people that like me or all the people that always agree with me, because they're not going to tell me. And they may not know, because the things that may be wrong with me may not be something that comes up between us. If I want to know where my challenges lie, I have to ask different types of people, and the kind of people that are going to give me the real answer. And so I think that's sometimes a struggle that we go through as humans, to understand that, number one, maybe this isn't the full story. Maybe I only read the back of the book and there's more inside the book. Maybe I should read more. And then once I open the book and start reading the book, realize that I'm going to take something out of it, but that might not be the correct story, or it might not be the full story, or I might not understand it all the way. And I can go and read articles on it. I can go read reviews on it. I can go watch the movie version of it, because today almost every good book is a movie somehow. But even watching the movie, it's going to be different. The movie is not the book. But you get these different depictions of it, these different sides of it, these different angles, and you get more and more of a handle on it. You're never really going to get the full thing, because you're not the author. You don't know all the ins and outs of everything. But you can get more of a grasp on it and make a better decisions and judgments and opinions about something, because you know more about it. You went to different diverse places to get your information about it, and you stayed open-minded and allowed answers that you liked, allowed answers that you didn't like, allowed answers that you didn't expect. If you're looking into something and this happens where you're like, Really? Huh. That's a good sign, I think. Because you're not like, oh no, not that. If you're thinking that way, if your reaction is like, I can't believe you said that, then it seems to me that you're allowing yourself to favor a certain idea. You're favoring the simplicity behind this black and whiteness. And I'm not saying that this person is right or wrong, but they're saying something, and at least listen to it and understand it enough to where you can validly say, okay, no, that's not true because this and this and this. Not like, how dare you say that? Of course that's not true. Don't you know this? Like, sometimes there's times where we can confuse our emotions or confuse certain events, like causality and correlation. We can confuse those when we get emotional. And is this really causing that? Is this really because of this? Or is I'm just saying that because I'm emotional? And I think when you take the time to look at something objectively, which is very difficult and very hard, and it takes a lot of time and effort, and most of the time it takes multiple people. Like, it takes different perspectives to be able to calm this person's emotionality in this place and that person's emotionality in that place, so that we can come to a logical place. But I think in a lot of cases it's worth it. It's an investment, but it pays dividends over the long haul if you can manage to finish the investment package and make the actual investment.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I kind of, to the point that you're addressing, I kind of see it as though whenever I'm going out to make an inquiry, and that's like I'm either talking to someone, going to go read something, like any sort of situation where there is the creation of some sort of question. I assume that whatever I inherently know, or whatever my inherent opinion is, it could be wrong. And it's like, even though it may be something that I'm pretty solid in, I've already done a certain amount of research, come to this sort of conclusion in some sort of way, always kind of leave out the possibility that was like, hey, even though I'm pretty sure this is the way we need to go, let's just assume that, hey, there's one new thing that happened today that I just haven't heard yet, and let's just go out and explore and see if maybe there's something I'm not aware of yet. And that, I feel like that's, for me personally, the best way to try to stay as objective as possible, because at least it allows me to see, like, I may be exploring somebody else's ideas or someone else's concepts, and even if they sound outlandish or unreasonable at first, it gives you that reason to be like, you know what, let's just take time, go down the rabbit hole, and explore the full length of what it is that they're saying. And then maybe that is where I can find something that I can grab that's new and I can learn something. Or in some cases, I find out, like, yeah, what I thought it isn't correct because I've learned all this additional information. And that gets me closer to figuring out what the actual truth is. So I come to find that 9 times out of 10, taking that approach, at least for me personally, is much more beneficial because it keeps me open-minded to learning other stuff. And in some cases, I do actually learn something new. But even if I don't learn something new and what I was thinking before was correct, at least, and one, it makes it easier to communicate with people because they can see you're taking them seriously. You're not you're not asking leading questions in a sense where it's like you already, the other person can tell that even though you're asking this question, it's not sincere. Like, you already set in your opinion. You already kind of are expecting this is going to go a certain way. And it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, one I was talking to somebody about a lot recently was the situation of defund the police or don't defund the police. And I kind of went into asking 2 different people about their opinions, both for and against it. And for me, I was kind of like, I took the approach for me personally, like, that I don't have the answer for which is right or which is wrong. And so that allowed me to hear from not so much an emotional perspective, but just from them taking data and explaining both sides of why one was for it and why one was against it. And I feel like that let me get a lot of insight that I didn't have beforehand.
Yeah. Listen as if it's possible, I mean, just slightly possible, that you could be a little bit misled or totally wrong. And always, no matter what the other person is saying, maintain that idea. Whatever you're reading, no matter how offensive it is, maintain this idea that it's possible, just maybe, that you don't have the full story, or that there's one detail that could change everything, or that you're completely wrong and you're the butthead in this situation. And not saying any of those are true, but always listening to understand, not listening to react, not listening to reply, not listening, just waiting for them to pause a little bit and seeing like where your hole is so you can like shoot through the hole. Listening as if it's possible you could be wrong. I think that's a big part of that, and I thank you for bringing that up. Mr. Rocky, it is 6:56, and this is an hour-long conversation, so we're going to cut off pretty soon. So I don't want to like cut you off in the middle of a good thought. But I think this has been great.
No worries.
I thank everybody for showing up. This, I think, is so important in these times to seek understanding, to listen to other people like they could have something to say. I don't think people talk unless they genuinely think they have something to say. And if they think they have something to say, then humor them and be like, maybe they do have something to say. And it doesn't matter what color they are, how old they are, what gender they are. Like, listen to kids too. Kids say the darndest things. That's even the name of a show. But they think it's important. And even if it's not important, it could be. And by shutting them down or saying, don't say that because I told you so or stuff, it teaches them that their voices aren't important. And so it could have future implications that aren't as good. I would say, as much as we can, try to listen to other people, try to be empathetic, try to be understanding, but still have your own thoughts and still, compare stuff and think logically. Other people can be wrong, but you're a person too. You can be wrong too. So that's kind of my split for reality chat. This has been about simple reasoning. I forgot what the title was, but like fast food thinking.
Yeah, we kind of jumped across a couple of different things. So it's kind of one of those talks where it started off simple and got real complex.
Yeah, that's the kind of talk that I like, because I think inside of every simplicity, there's a complexity, and inside of every complexity, there is it's like a yin yang kind of thing where you play with both. And I appreciate like you being willing to kind of open up the book and look at the different chapters of the concept, and we've been able to run through a lot of things. So I think it's been cool, and it's what this whole thing is about: inspiring conversation, letting people watch conversation and participate, hopefully, but giving people healthy things to think about. So sorry to all the people that are joining in the last 5 minutes, but this is gonna be over in like 2 minutes. Rocky, thank you so much for having this talk with me. I always give a chance for the people online with me in case they're working on any projects or they want to say anything at the end to plug themselves. And so if you have anything that you're working on, or if you want to continue the conversation, ask me questions, I'll leave the floor up to you for a minute or two.
The only thing I could really say is that I have kind of a lot of stuff that's still in, I'd say, pre-production. So where it's one of those situations where things haven't been formulated to the point where there's actually a product for you to take a look at. But one of the easy ways for somebody to see any of from our last conversation, some of the work that I've been working on is through a channel that you'll see a lot of my stories on, which is a KSNN channel. So anyone that likes to see interesting content about kids and sports, definitely check that out. The Instagram is KSNN and then the word channel.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say you'll see some interesting stories about kids playing sports.
Okay. So we didn't say it in the beginning, but Rocky works on basically doing like ESPN level like filming and recording and kind of stuff, but for like kids sports. And so I think that's pretty cool, and it gives children a chance to connect with children and see that other people are doing stuff. So I would say kudos for even just doing that kind of work. And if you want to get kind of hooked up with that, definitely go follow what he was talking about. But other than that, what's today? Wednesday? We have reality chat, which is a weekly thing right now. Tomorrow, there is a community discussion that I'm hosting as a part of PACT with Michelle Hebert, and it's called #Heard. It's specifically about social justice and coming together as a community, talking to each other and listening so we can get kind of in the depth of things rather than just going and protesting and not really know what we're protesting about. I'm not saying everybody does that. A lot of people know what they're talking about, but in an effort to try and get us to know what we're talking about and know how we can contribute, I'm having a session that you can check out my Instagram page for, and it's basically just a chance for us to talk, understand other people's positions, and then try to come up with plans where we can use our skills as a community help build the community. So that's hashtag Heard tomorrow. I think it's at like 6 or 7 o'clock. I forgot. But yeah, check out my page for cool events. And this has been Reality Chat with Mr. Rocky. I thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's been great. Been talking about favoring simplicity. I remembered it this time. But
Hey,
yeah.
Thank you for the invitation and for the stimulating conversation, man.
Yeah, cool. Michelle.